There are so many chilling enemies within the Resident Evil series, and Resident Evil 4 is no exception to this. The enemies of this game hold many dark secrets behind the truth of their origins, so here is the disturbing lore of every Resident Evil 4 enemy. The Los Illuminados was a religious cult from the village of Valdelobos that believes that the parasite known as Las Plagas is a holy creature given to humanity by God, and upon infection from the Plaga, the cult's members are believed to be purified of their sinful blood, and their souls will be saved. Los Illuminados would be worshipped for centuries, where the cult would practice many beliefs from Roman Catholicism, while also performing many human sacrificial ceremonies among other twisted acts. As many years went by, a ruler by the name of Gregorio Salazar would eventually enter the region, with the goal of restoring Catholicism as the dominant religion of Valdelobos. Leading a small army into the area, they began slaughtering followers of the Los Illuminados, with some being tied up and executed, while others being burnt at the stake. When the conquest was completed successfully, Salazar took on the role of a feudal lord, both protecting the Roman Catholic converts while persecuting any suspected Los Illuminados activities. The Plaga parasite that the Los Illuminados worshipped would then be sealed away in an ancient complex in the caves beneath his castle, erasing all existence of the twisted cult that is Los Illuminados. Following Gregorio Salazar's eventual death, his descendants would maintain his mission of Catholic dominance in the region up until the 21st century, where his descendant Ramon Salazar would be leading at the time. It was during this time when a mysterious man by the name of Osman Sadler would enter the region, with the goal of restoring dominance of Los Illuminados. Taking advantage of his young and isolated state, Ramon Salazar was approached by Sadler, who provided him with insight into Los Illuminados. Salazar was ultimately tricked and manipulated into abandoning his Catholic faith, and instead pursuing the views and beliefs of Los Illuminados. As ruler of the region, this ideal was quickly forced on everyone in the area, where they would all be infected with Las Plagas, turning them into crazed, mind-controlled hosts. This allowed Sadler to gain full control of Valdelobos, where he then began plans for world domination. The Ganados were once a group of human villagers that had abandoned much of modern technology to protect their culture and maintain a more peaceful and simpler life. They would frequently attend church services, which would be led by the village leader Chief Mendez, who would preach to the community about their Catholic practices. Sadler would eventually enter the region and trick Salazar into reviving Los Illuminados by recruiting many villagers from the area to begin excavation in the mines beneath the castle to dig up Las Plagas. As work began, the villagers would become exposed to Plaga spores that came from carcasses they dug up, causing the workers to become extremely sick. It wasn't long after when the spores in their bodies regenerated into fully formed Plaga bodies, which tragically turned them into crazed Ganados. This small group of Ganados were quickly captured by Sadler and his team, where they then began brutal experimentation to create a large number of Plaga eggs for the purpose of spreading the virus to the entire region. Not long after this, Sadler entered the small village to attend church services. Here, he began to preach to the congregation about fantastic stories, which persuaded them to join Los Illuminados and take part in the blood cleansing ritual, claiming that injection from his virus will purify their sinful blood and save their souls. At first, it was only a small portion of the community he had convinced to be injected, but soon after, this small group began forcing their own family members to take part in the ritual to save them. After the entire village finished their conversion ritual, they were then told the Los Illuminados version of their folktale on the first Castilian Gregorio Salazar. In their version, the first Castellan was envious of the cultists' righteousness and persecuted them. Ramon Salazar, the current 8th Castellan, is reinterpreted as a redeemed man, having freed the cultists. The villagers became disturbed by this story, as it proves to them that they have been lied to for centuries. In the time after their conversion, villagers began to feel ill, with symptoms of heavy coughing and seizures becoming prevalent in the community. In one account, a family was having dinner when their daughter became stricken at the table and had a seizure. Her body contorted as her limbs shook violently, and ultimately died right there. With their brains altered from the infection, the parents just stood there and felt no emotions as they watched their daughter pass. Shortly after this, there became many accounts of villagers suffering from violent headaches, which felt as if their heads were being split open. Their blood became hot as well, with so much pressure that some began to bleed out and vomit blood. Over the next few days, every child in the village had passed away, as their bodies were unable to handle exposure to Las Plagas. The adults soon after became emotionally emptied and mindless, finally succumbing fully to Sadler's virus. Father Mendez, in his capacity as village chief, issues a notice to the villagers to keep outsiders away from the village in order to protect the Prophet Sadler's life, which became interpreted as an order to kill strangers. Following the storming of the region by Leon and Ada, the Ganados faced several losses, including that of all dominant Plaga hosts. Ganados exhibit a number of behavioral and biological traits that differ from uninfected humans. The physical appearance of the creature appears to depend on the strength of the individual Plaga parasite. The Plaga parasite appears to fill the eyes of the victim with blood, or otherwise interact with the victim's eyes in a manner that causes them to undergo intense strain. Under low light conditions, the Ganado exhibits a condition where the eyes glow fiercely. The average Ganado appears to be middle-aged or slightly younger. While there is a lack of evidence for a strict age requirement for basic Plaga infection, it can be inferred by the sheer amount of middle-aged Ganados that the ideal candidate for a Ganado transformation is a fully formed host body. Due to the Plaga's complete infections, tendrils run throughout the Ganado's body, revealed by surface wounds, dismemberments, or any major breach of the body. As the Plaga parasites have taken control of the central nervous system, Ganado hosts can be controlled or influenced by them. The host retains their memories and intelligence unlike zombies, and can still communicate with other people and perform actions beyond simple survival instinct. Hosts are highly aggressive towards those not infected, but will still attack other hosts if necessary. Outside of combat, Ganados are known to maintain a lifestyle comparable to uninfected humans, with farm workers continuing to look after their cattle and using pitchforks to turn hay. However, their attitudes to hygiene are noticeably different, with the villagers known to eat rotting meats and stews. As an effect of their parasitization, Ganado bodies become more durable and powerful, and their pain threshold is increased. These enhancements allow hosts to easily lift other people and withstand gunshots without response. If a Ganado receives too much damage, however, the Plaga may cause irreparable bodily damage by ripping open their neck to personally defend itself from attackers. Some Ganados are known to become stronger and more durable than others, arming themselves with heavy chainsaws as a more powerful weapon. Dr. Salvador is a burly chainsaw-wielding villager with a burlap sack over his head, while wearing typical farmer clothing in addition. He can be detected by the sound of a chainsaw revving nearby. Due to his size, sack mask, and unique weapon, he is very easy to tell apart from regular villagers. Once a respected doctor among the villagers, his mind was corrupted by the Las Plagas parasite, turning him into a merciless executioner to those who oppose the cult's will. Dr. Salvador retains much of his design in the RE4 remake, albeit his blood-curdling eyes are more visible due to the holes of his potato sack being larger in comparison. He had more bloodstains on his clothes, presumably from previous fights / mutation, and has a noticeably slimmer physique than his original incarnation. Due to the Plaga parasite, the Chainsaw Man has become exceptionally violent and is compelled to relentlessly chase his enemies with his trademark chainsaw. Also, due to the Plaga's assimilation, he has been made exceptionally robust in comparison to regular villagers and can absorb small arms fire with ease. This robustness is further accentuated by his resistance to knockdown from melee attacks, often being staggered back instead of falling to the ground. The Bella Sisters are some of the most terrifying enemies within Valdelobos. Like Dr. Salvador, the Bella Sisters cover their face with bandages to conceal their identity. Originating from the same village under Los Illuminados, the Bella Sisters were once ordinary villagers, whose lives were drastically changed after being exposed to Sadler's virus. The Plaga parasite gave the sisters enhanced physical attributes compared to regular Ganado, having heightened aggression and being able to endure gunfire with ease. The El Gigante were first produced from human infant test subjects during Sadler's experimentation of the Plaga parasite. They placed a Plaga within the baby's cervical vertebrae, which caused the body to exhibit extreme growth, reaching 4 times the height of a normal human being. Alongside this growth and height was a tremendous display of strength and stamina, paired with an unfortunate side effect of a reduction in intelligence, as well as their decrease in controllability. Rendered as practical feral beasts, they would attack anything moving, including defeating other Plaga carriers like Ganado. Though they proved to be exceptional as bioweapons, they became difficult to control and were a danger to the Ganados. Consequently, Los Illuminados produced only a small number of El Gigante, spreading them around the region. A log from one of the villagers better shows the evolution of the creature and the struggles they faced in containing it. 6 months. Its teeth have only just come through, but it shoves everything within reach into its mouth. It can't walk yet, but it swallowed a dog whole. 9 months. It already towers over me, but it keeps growing. The town hall can no longer contain it. 10 months. It keeps growing even after moving to the quarry. It can devour a whole cow in only 3 days. 13 months. It can swing our largest pickaxe as if it were a twig. One of the men in the village was almost eaten today too. It's not getting enough food. 17 months. There are only a few cows left now. At this rate, the whole village will starve. We summoned help from the castle and had them put the beast to sleep with an incantation. Hopefully, it won't wake for a long time. The El Gigante by far has some of the most disturbing origins in the entire franchise, with Sadler's use of infant children experimentation just goes to show you the twisted lengths he would go to meet his goals. Being one of the earlier Plaga experiments by Los Illuminados, Del Lago was a salamander that became host to the Plaga parasite. The organism reacted to its small host by mutating it, increasing its size considerably. More than 20 meters in length, Del Lago created an immense jaw with several rows of teeth, and from its throat, many Plaga tentacles emerged when it swam in an attack pattern. Capable of devouring human beings, it was a true leviathan residing in the lake near the village's church. It possessed no discernible eyes, but its speed was deceptively fast in water and could react to any motion within the lake nearly instantly. Due to improper scaling of its size in comparison to an ordinary salamander, Del Lago's legs became unproportionate to its body, and it was no longer capable of using them to walk. Ultimately, this salamander was sealed away in the village lake because the cult was unable to control its behavior via the Plaga. It was fed by the disposal of corpses, as seen by Leon as a pair of Ganados dumped a police officer's corpse into the lake. Leon first learned of the creature near the church, where a letter notified the Ganado that the creature had been awoken by Prophet Sadler to guard the lake. While Leon was crossing the lake, the Del Lago got hooked onto the boat's anchor, which then dragged the boat across the lake. After bombarding the beast with nearly a dozen harpoons, the Del Lago began spewing blood in copious quantities. Ultimately succumbing to its injuries, the creature sank to the bottom of the lake, ridding the village of one of its deadliest creatures. Colmillos are dogs which have become host to Plaga parasites and turned feral. As a result of the infection, the teeth have been replaced with larger teeth that dig deep into their victim's skin as they bite. Colmillos can be identified in the night by their highly reflective glowing eyes seen from afar. The spine of Colmillos suffer from deformities as a result of the parasite's growth in the abdomen, and in a situation where the creature is threatened, the Plaga is then liable to inflict serious injury by tearing open the skin so its bladed tentacles can be used as a weapon. As dogs are natural pack animals, they are known to adapt to the infection much easier than humans. When hunting prey, the Colmillos tend to attack in groups, with one going for the throat while another flanks them. Bitores Mendez was a Catholic priest who ran the church in Valdelobos and was chief of the local village. He was responsible for teaching literacy and mathematics to the children of the village during the day, while dining with the family at night to hear their recent stories of grievances and gossip. Sometime after the turn of the millennium, Chief Mendez was approached by the Los Illuminados, who sought to exploit the chief's influential position among the locals to convert them. Mendez eventually shifted to Sadler's cause, becoming a priest for Los Illuminados, and asked the villagers to visit the chapel when the harvest festival was over. There, Sadler manipulated the villagers into joining his cause by having them convert to his twisted cult. For Mendez's service, he was given a newly engineered dominant species Plaga, which allowed him full control over his body, as well as the ability to mutate if needed. Following the successful conversion and infection of the villagers, Mendez was given control over them as Sadler's lieutenant. In 2004, Sadler's American Mole abducted Ashley Graham in a plot to infiltrate and convert the United States government to Los Illuminados. This operation coincided with the escape of Dr. Luis Serra, a lead bioweapons researcher who had betrayed Sadler and stole the dominant Plaga egg that they intended to infect the US president with. The village chief garnered suspicions that this was part of a planned extraction operation involving a third party, and Dr. Serra was eventually kidnapped by the villagers for interrogation. Meanwhile, Mendez was forced to coordinate his forces against the third party's agents Ada Wong and Leon Kennedy. Although Leon managed to find and free Luis, Mendez cornered them both immediately afterward and captured them. However, Leon soon escaped and passed through the village chief's house, where he was then met by Mendez himself. He attempted to strangle the agent, but relented when Leon's eyes turned red in color, indicating that he had been infected with a Plaga egg. Ada Wong, who had been watching the encounter from a nearby window, intervened and fired 2 bullets at Mendez. The chief then left his house to look for the intruder that shot him. Once Ada went inside and began to explore the house, she was quickly grabbed and thrown by Mendez, where he then began to pursue her through the village. Before the chief managed to reach her, Ada used her grapple gun to get on the other side of a locked door. Unable to barge through, Mendez gave up and fled the area. From there, he began to write an order to the remaining villagers to convert the area closest to the castle into a defensive position so that no intruders may pass. Many of the villagers heard the chief's call and flocked to this area, with the Bella sisters also arriving to defend a crank that's used to open the doors that lead to the castle. Leon would eventually enter this area and manage to decimate the remaining villagers along with the Bella sisters, where he would then proceed forward to the castle. The chief quickly halted the two as he decided to take matters into his own hands and stop Leon and Ashley before they could get any further. He closed off the double doors and began chasing them through the village until Leon and Ashley made it to the other side of the bridge that collapsed, causing the chief to look for another path to reach them. As Leon entered a cabin next to the castle, Mendez ambushed him by breaking through a wall and knocking him to the floor. As the chief inched closer and closer to Leon, he then got hit with an explosive barrel, causing him to mutate uncontrollably into his final stage. A battle then commenced between the two in a fiery cabin, but was short-lived after Leon ultimately managed to defeat him, ending the unfortunate story of Chief Mendez. The Zealots were once regular servants and defenders of the Salazar castle until Sadler entered the region and established Los Illuminados' dominance, which caused Ramon Salazar to impress these ideals and beliefs upon his Catholic servants. During baptismal ceremonies welcoming them into the cult, these men were implanted with Plaga eggs, which soon rendered them highly susceptible to infection and effectively became Salazar slaves, whom he saw with disdain as lesser beings. As with other Ganado followers, the monks would alternate from performing their daily tasks to performing rituals and to taking up arms against outsiders. As slaves to Salazar's whim, the monks were known to suffer from his amusement as tests in his booby traps or sent out on suicide attacks. One prevalent example of this is the spike trap, where we see dozens of cultists falling victim to this cruel punishment. Zealots are known to have worn a wide variety of clothing, which indicated their rank in the cult. Most wore black robes, while a small number were outfitted with red robes and wore goat skulls as helmets. These zealots would act as leaders of the other cultists, and have the ability to call on the Las Plagas parasite at will to explode from bodies of nearby zealots. With this power to connect with the Plaga, these zealots were also known to call on much stronger Plaga-type enemies like the El Gigante. The Garrador, translated as the Clawer in Spanish, were once human hosts that underwent physical enhancement through the use of the Plaga, appearing as a large armored gladiator-like warrior with retractable claws grafted to each forearm. The Garrador is a dangerous and extremely aggressive enemy which has a high resistance to frontal attacks. This creature has two main weaknesses. The first is its lack of eyesight, and the second is its visibly exposed Plaga erupting from its spine. The Garrador finds its prey by hearing, and will charge towards the origin of any loud noises in earshot, viciously swiping with its claws. These creatures are extremely dangerous and can kill a human in seconds if they are caught in the path of one of their rampages, with some cases shown to completely decapitate a human. Prior to the infection, the Garrador once served as the torturer of the castle. Even among his family, he was special. He enjoyed his work wholeheartedly and had a talent for it, being gifted at tormenting others. This ability quickly attracted Salazar's interest, where they then took the man deep into the dungeon, where they strapped him down and injected him with an enhanced version of the Plaga parasite, one that would give him exceptional strength and super heightened aggression, finishing off by equipping the creature with massive razor-sharp claws and heavy suits of armor. The creature became one of Sadler's strongest creations to be used for world domination. However, it wasn't long before the Garrador's aggression became too much to handle, as it began slaughtering any cultist in sight. Because of this, the creature was taken back down to the dungeon, where they would strap him to a wall with chains and sew his eyes shut. This loss of sight heightened their other senses, particularly their hearing, making them deadly creatures even when deprived of their vision. In hopes of keeping the creature alive, Salazar would forcefully send his caretaker down to the dungeon to attend to the Garrador by feeding him and disposing of the filth, all while listening to the wretched screams of the creature as it fought to break free from the chains. It wasn't long after when Leon would enter the castle and eventually stumble upon this twisted creature. As Leon was looking for a key to open a locked door, the floor below him collapsed, landing him face to face with the terrifying enemy. As Leon attempted to slowly flee the area, the Garrador was then able to break off the chains holding him captive and chase after Leon. After a difficult battle, Leon managed to do enough damage to the Plaga on the creature's back, where it then fell to the ground in defeat. Aside from this Garrador, both Leon and Ada encountered a few more of these creatures infected with the same Plaga strain, with some being heavily armored compared to others. Armadura, translated to armor in Spanish, are Plaga-possessed suits of armor inhabiting the darkest corridors of the Salazar castle. When a Plaga escapes from its host, it cannot survive for very long. To sustain themselves, some hid within the medieval armor to protect themselves while conserving their energy in a dormant state. Stretching themselves to fit all four of the suit's limbs, these Plagas can defend themselves while they search for new hosts. These creatures attack with medieval weapons such as claymores and halberds. The weak point of these armors are the helmets. If damaged enough, the Plaga will break free of the helmet and expose itself from the neck of their armor, becoming vulnerable to gunfire and particularly flashbang grenades, which can kill an exposed Plaga instantly. Additionally, some Armadura may attempt to ambush their victims by staying still among other armors, waiting until their target approaches before making a single attack when in range. There are two varieties of the Armadura, one in a lighter colored silver armor and a round helmet, which tends to contain a Type A Plaga and wield a broadsword. The other Armadura variant comes from just one single Plaga. Located deep in the castle's dungeon, the gold Armadura stands as a towering threat from Sadler's army. The gold armor of this creature is much more durable compared to typical silver Armadura, and on top of this, the particular Plaga host within the gold Armadura is enhanced to be much more aggressive than the others, making this creature a very dangerous foe to encounter. The Verdugo's, translating to Executioner in Spanish, were created by a fusion of human and insect DNA, completely controlled by a Plaga, created to serve as Salazar's guards. The Verdugo's are at first unseen, their forms hidden under long red and black cloaks that bore the Los Illuminados insignia. Their faces, however, were seen to be clearly inhuman, having shimmering red eyes and large mandibles, and their hands having only two long, spindly fingers with one opposable thumb. Later, when one of them was sent to hunt down Leon Kennedy, it discarded its cloak to reveal a thin, insectoid body, covered in a black exoskeleton and having a long, segmented tail. As it tracked Leon, it would occasionally attack by thrusting its tail through the floor or ceiling grate. Its carapace is harder than steel, allowing it to survive gunfire and explosions. The Verdugo's also seem to possess very high intelligence, both showing the capability of restraint and violence. The Verdugo is capable of sneaking and hiding before attacking its prey out of sight. Verdugo demonstrates the capacity to take orders and contains high levels of comprehension, as shown when Salazar instructed one to kill Leon and ordered the other to take Ashley Graham to the ritual. Furthermore, when Leon struck the creature with an ineffective attack, it then tauntingly waggled its finger before resuming its attack, demonstrating a complex level of emotion and personality. The full history into the creation of the Verdugo gets very dark, and it all started from a mad scientist by the name of Isidro, who was approached by Salazar to quote, improve the flaws of their human form, to seek perfection as observed in their arthropodal siblings. With hopes to please his master Salazar, Isidro began forcefully kidnapping maids within the castle to use for experimentation, where he would then inject a special strain of the Plaga parasite into the maid's womb and impregnate them, as he quoted that a pure soul proves to be highly malleable and adaptive. With this experiment, Isidro was able to create a new species of Plaga known as the Novistadors, which were massive bug creatures that could blend in with their surroundings. After the major success of this experiment and praise from Sadler himself, Isidro decided to progress to his final stage of experimentation, which was the pursuit and fusing insect and human into one. His first test subject was the Housekeeper, who graciously offered herself to volunteer. Injecting her with his new Plaga strain, the Housekeeper was painfully transformed into Verdugo number 1, where she would then serve as the right hand of Salazar. After the success of his final experiment, Isidro decided it was finally time to demonstrate his loyalty to Sadler's cause by injecting himself with the Plaga strain. A note that Isidro left in the castle better explains his motives of transformation. Upon the release of this valve, black liquid shall enter my veins and circulate throughout my entire body. I expect this will be the most painful experience of my life. I await the trial with great anticipation. It is an honor to suffer through the holy labor of rebirth. The next time I awaken, it will be as a true servant of Master Ramon. I, Isidro, make this vow. I will surpass the limitations of man and become a true servant of God. I will find the heretics and serve as their executioner, their Verdugo. As Isidro eventually transformed into Verdugo number 2, he would then proceed to watch over and guard Ramon Salazar, up until Leon would arrive at the castle and become quite the annoyance for Salazar. Because of this, Salazar would eventually send Isidro to hunt Leon down in the sewers to end him for good. Once Leon turned the lever for the elevator, Isidro jumped in front of him ready to attack. Leon managed to fend him off, and after much exposure to liquid nitrogen, the Verdugo ultimately succumbed to his injuries and fell to the ground, ending the twisted story of Isidro. U3, or Pacenta, was the Housekeeper of Ramon that volunteered herself to be part of Isidro's experimentation, thus turning her into a Verdugo. Prior to her transformation, the same staff worker had witnessed Ramon Salazar's display of cruel temperament during his younger years, in which he burned one of the servants' face with a vial of vitriol as vengeance for insulting him. As if such an incident wasn't traumatizing enough, she also saw how Ramon delved further into darkness ever since treated by Osman Sadler, and converted to their faith in return. Despite everything, the staff worker continued to serve her master no matter what for the sake of her late father Diego Salazar, and continued to do so even after enduring an agonizing experiment into U3, and embraced the cult's faith herself along the way. Acting as the right hand of Salazar, the Verdugo would guard Ramon up until Ada Wong's arrival to the castle. When she freed Luis from his cell, the two were quickly approached by Pacenta. Luis fled the area while Ada engaged in combat with the creature, and in the process became infected with a parasite from it. After the lengthy battle, Pacenta disappears and begins to stalk Ada throughout Valdelobos, where it would then confront her again in the main village area. During this battle, Ada experienced extreme hallucinations, but was able to do enough damage to cause the creature to flee. U3 is later seen back at the castle, standing beside Isidro as Salazar gives his ultimatum to Leon and Ashley before disappearing once again. It eventually returns to pursue Ada as she is gathering the ingredients for the suppressant of the Plaga. After Luis gives her a dose and it fails to immediately go into effect, U3 once more approaches Ada and corners her. Just as it was about to find her, the suppressant's effects begin to work, and the creature is no longer able to locate her, causing it to leave the scene. After Ada goes through the underground sewers of the castle, U3 halts Ada and begins to attack her once more, but ends up being crushed by a large piece of a metal bridge, causing it to mutate into a more grotesque form of itself, and sprouting a tail like Plaga. After inflicting massive damage to the creature, it began to mutate uncontrollably into a centipede-like creature, which was capable of burrowing underground to ambush its prey. After engaging in combat for one final time, U3 was ultimately killed once the Plaga was destroyed. Ada would then lie down in agony as she spits out the parasite implanted to her by Pacenta, freeing her from its infection. The Vertigos in Resident Evil 4 left a huge impact in its story, with its very dark and disturbing origins, making it one of the most twisted creations in the franchise. Novistadors were a species of BOWs developed by Isidro as part of his experiment in splicing genes of human and insect to rid the flaws found in human form and to become closer to the Plaga that Los Illuminados highly revered in the process. The first generation of these creatures were created by impregnating a human virgin with a type of Plaga secretion referred as black liquid, which fertilized egg cells in her womb, resulting her to give birth to mutated babies that eventually underwent metamorphosis into fully adult human-sized insectoid creatures, almost deprived of human characteristics. For melee combat, Novistadors utilized razor-sharp talons on its front limbs. They could also spit acid from their maw, which was corrosive enough to melt through human flesh and muscle tissue. In addition to quickly skittering about across floors and ceilings, these creatures could fly thanks to their wings, which also provided extra boost of speed. True to their namesake, Novistadors possessed the ability to camouflage by altering the pigments in their exoskeleton to blend in with the environment, remaining still until unsuspecting prey entered striking distance, at which they swiftly reveal themselves and attack. Novistadors were also shown to build and live in a hive-like structure similar to wasps, as shown in the underground cavern level. A similar structure could also be found in the castle. Ramon Salazar was the son of Diego Salazar, the 7th Castellan, and Catalina Salazar. Throughout his childhood, Ramon suffered an illness in which he is not expected to live to adulthood, much to Catalina's horror, who had invited Sadler into their homes in an attempt to save his life. The cultists treated his disease by injecting him with the dominant species of Plaga. Soon after, Diego is mysteriously murdered, and Catalina disappears shortly after, leaving him as an orphan and inheriting the castle at a very young age. In his adolescent years, Ramon develops cruelty when he overhears a servant mocking him, where he then dragged her to the chambers and forced her to kneel while he poured vitriol on her face, completely melting her skin. As time passes, Salazar's cruelty and treachery strengthens, and the cult soon learns that they can prey on him. Taking advantage of the Castellan's young and isolated state, Sadler approached Salazar and provided him with insight into Los Illuminados. Salazar eventually converted to Los Illuminados, and with that forced everyone into the region to convert as well. Salazar was granted one of the dominant species Plagas, granting him full control over his body, as well as the ability to control hosts like the armed force of cultists and the 2 cloaked bodyguards under his command. He was also in charge of protecting Queen Plaga, a large creature which asexually reproduced new Plagas constantly and can be merged with if the situation called for it. Salazar makes his presence known when Leon and Ashley were looking for a way to escape the castle. Salazar demanded Leon to hand over Ashley, but the US agent refused to do so. Nonetheless, refusing to give up, Salazar declares that Los Illuminados must have Ashley, and reveals that with her as the source, the United States and eventually the world will be overcome with grace of Osman Sadler. When he asked the two if they would accept, Ashley firmly rebuffed it. Disappointed by this, he summons a group of Ganado zealots to kill Leon, before departing with his Verdugo bodyguards. Later, as Leon traverses through the castle, Salazar calls him via wired phone and asks him if he is ready to hand over Ashley, which only annoys Leon. Later, after Ashley was captured, Salazar speaks to him through a speaker, beginning to mock him over losing his companion. When Leon reaches the throne room, Salazar is seen sitting as a ritual is prepared for Ashley. After Leon was subdued by one of the cloaked Vertigos, Salazar orders his zealots to force Ashley into drinking a black substance and urges the girl to not resist, as it would only worsen her suffering. Before the Vertigo would throw Leon into a deep well, Salazar sadistically bids him farewell in Spanish. After Leon survived the trap and ventured to a part of the castle to rescue Ashley, Salazar was then encountered again, and the Castellan expressed annoyance that Leon will not yield. He then sent 2 Ganado archers to remove the agent from the castle. Salazar was later spied on by Leon, who watches through binoculars as the Castellan and his zealots escort Ashley to a chamber. Meeting with Major Jack Krauser, Ramon immediately hands over the girl to him. When Leon arrived too late to save Ashley, Salazar proceeded to mock him, but was inflicted with several wounds by Leon. This caused Salazar to mutate into a hideous monster, with his deformed human body appearing in the mouth, as he had merged with the Queen Plaga, which was hidden somewhere nearby. Although the Castellan tried to kill Leon, he instead met his own defeat at the hands of the agent. In his dying moments, Salazar cried out to his master, begging for help, but he ultimately succumbed to his wounds and died, ending the story of Ramon Salazar. Ganado soldiers were once a military group that became corrupted from the Los Illuminados cult. Once Sadler infiltrated Valdelobos and converted the whole local population to his cult, he quickly realized that he would need a strong layer of defense for his team's bioweapons research into the Plaga parasite. With the military island close by, Sadler and his team infiltrated the area and quickly manipulated and indoctrinated all soldiers into becoming part of his cult, where they were all then injected with the Plaga parasite, turning them into Ganados used for defense. Coming from a military background, these island Ganado were the strongest of their class and were equipped with more advanced weaponry, including stun rods, turrets, miniguns, and much more, making them the perfect army for Sadler's last line of defense. JJ is one of the more powerful Ganados encountered by Leon on the island. Based on his massive size and strength, it's likely that this enemy was injected with an enhanced version of the Plaga parasite, used to defend more important areas of the island. Due to his enhanced strength, JJ has been equipped with a minigun that he will use to slaughter anyone who opposes the cult's will. Another enhanced Ganado found exclusively on the island are the soldiers wielding massive hammers. As in a similar case to JJ, these creatures became infected with an enhanced strain of the Plaga, giving them increased size, strength, and aggression. They have also been equipped with heavy durable armor for protection, even going as far as to weld a piece of metal onto the creature's face. Even though there are only a few of these creatures found on the island, their increase in strength and aggression paired with the durable armor makes them one of the most dangerous enemies on Sadler's Island. The Regenerators were once human researchers that were forced into being implanted with multiple Plaga parasites, causing their bodies to mutate radically. It all started once Sadler's research team was able to create a new superior species of Plaga, where the host's cognitive functions would not be diminished. Upon creation, head researcher Annabelle Garcia had proceeded with advanced brutal experimentation, where they would forcefully strap the subject down and implant them with multiple Plagas from their new species. Upon completion of the experiment, the subject began to mutate uncontrollably, where a new mouth began to fuse on the head. Also, the body would sprout giant limbs, and the skin began to turn gray and become very durable. With metamorphosis fully complete, the subject would ultimately turn into the team's deadliest creation, the Regenerator. This creature was quickly stored away in a cryogenic stasis, but it wouldn't be long after when the creature would break out of containment and begin to run rampant and slaughter anyone it found in the lab at the time, leaving 7 dead and 19 wounded. This would quickly grab Sadler's attention, seeing how powerful the creation truly was. With that, he would begin to capture all of the researchers and imprison them. One by one, they would be taken into the lab and become forcefully subjected to their own experiments, turning every single one of them into Regenerators. Some would be placed in cold storage on the island, while others would be placed in bags to be transferred to their designated locations. Regenerators have many advanced traits compared to other enemies. Being implanted with multiple Plaga, these in a way act as the creature's hearts, and once all eliminated, the creature will explode. If a Regenerator is injured in other areas, the Plaga will act fast and sprout small tentacles from the wound, which appears to knit new flesh, recreating entire limbs within seconds. This allows the Regenerator to recover from bullet wounds, lost limbs, and decapitations. Although they are usually slow, Regenerators are capable of frightening bursts of speed when attacking, viciously slashing and biting, and stretching their arms to unnatural lengths to grab their prey. A Regenerator may also randomly run into their victims and knock them down with its powerful arms, where it then begins to rip the victim apart if it's unable to push them off. Also, when their legs are blown away, they can move forward very quickly by slamming themselves toward the ground, causing them to jump forward. This is all possible due to their bodies almost completely, if not entirely, consisting of pure muscle, manipulated by the leech-like Plagas hiding in its body. The presence of a Regenerator nearby can be instantly detected by the sound of their erratic and strained breathing, adding to their already frightening demeanor. The Iron Maiden is shown to be an evolution of the Regenerator. When some Regenerators have had all of its Plaga parasites destroyed, they will quickly undergo a second metamorphosis in response. It will start by ripping open its stomach and begin regenerating the body to form a new Plaga on its head. Afterward, the creature will lift its upper torso back up and grow deadly spikes all over its body as a defense mechanism. The creature's skin will become pale and leathery, with areas of muscle and flesh being exposed through gaps in response to severe damage. After the mutation is complete, the Iron Maiden becomes a stronger and more aggressive version of the Regenerator. It will fire its spikes at will to poke anyone within range, and will also grab and pull their victims close to its body so it can activate its spikes and brutally attack them. Upon death, an Iron Maiden will convulse and writhe before exploding, after which its spikes will fire out toward any unfortunate individual. Plagas were a parasitic arthropod located in Valdelobos, which was used by Sadler to create an army of Ganados. By latching onto the nervous system, Plagas can exert influence over their host's actions, leading to increased aggression in human hosts. Additionally, they form social groups with other infected hosts. Unless the host's brain is destroyed or compromised, the infection's influence is not absolute, allowing them to continue their daily routines. Throughout the Plaga's life cycle, it will undergo 3 stages, with the first being the Guadana stage. In this stage of their life, Plagas have soft bodies resembling flesh, which pulsates, sporting yellow eyeballs and long tentacles. When they detect a threat, they will split their bodies in half and expose a giant long tentacle with a scythe-like end to it, which they violently swing at enemies. Next, the Plaga will go into the Mandibula stage, and in this form, the body has grown considerably since its Guanda stage. In the previous form's tentacles have hardened, forming into legs, which, when the parasite is still within the host's body, can be used as arms. These limbs are strong enough to grab human heads and force them towards the Plaga's mouth, where they can be seriously bitten. Mandibula is also capable of spitting acid in the faces of attackers. Finally, the Plaga will enter the Arana stage, where it erupts from the host's body and can now roam free on its own. However, many are known to latch back on to nearby Ganado and hijack the body with its tendrils. With the host now being occupied with 2 Plagas, they will then enter a berserker state, endangering those around them and even themselves. Even when the host is decapitated, they will still persist on attacking any non-infected on sight, until the attached Arana is removed. Brutes are Ganados that were injected with an enhanced version of the Plaga strain, making them highly aggressive, stronger, and more durable compared to regular Ganado. These enemies act as enforcers within Sadler's army, and equip themselves with bull or pig heads for masks to establish their dominance within the cult. There are 3 different variants of the Brute, being the hammer, the crossbow, and the unarmed variant. The hammer is the first variant encountered by Leon in the village. These are villagers wielding a large sledgehammer and wearing a mask made out of the head of a bull. The unarmed are a rare version of the Brute. They are Ganados fighting with their fists and feet, and wear a mask made out of the head of a white bull. The crossbow is a combatant Brute located on the island that is armed with an automatic crossbow, although they are required to wind it up before firing. These Brutes are specialized in ranged weaponry and wear a mask that's made out of the head of a wild boar. Martinico, an enemy we exclusively encounter in the Separate Ways DLC, was once a fragile test subject despised by its researchers for being deformed compared to the other test subjects. During Ada's mission to infiltrate the island, Martinico breached its containment, running rampant and destroying most of the laboratory in its vicinity, while killing anyone within its way. It pursues Ada all the way until they reach the hallway full of lasers, where Ada then uses her acrobatic abilities to avoid the lasers while escaping the relentless beast. Ada eventually used her hookshot to escape the facility, and Martinico was ultimately obliterated by many lasers. Due to being fused with the dominant species Plaga, Martinico has gained significant regenerative abilities, more so than the Regenerator, making it pretty much immune to conventional weaponry. It also endows inhuman levels of strength, capable of destroying concrete walls. This also led to the decline of its intelligence, making it impossible to contain once it escapes confinement. Martinico is impervious to most weapons, making it impossible to defeat by conventional means. Thus, it is mostly oriented around chase and stealth sequences. Jack Krauser was once a soldier who was tasked in training new recruits in the top secret government program, putting them through grueling training that transferred his knowledge and wisdom in close quarters combat and battle. One of the recruits was Leon Scott Kennedy, who Krauser took a particular interest in. In 2002, Krauser was among the few chosen elite soldiers to participate in Operation Javier, which was planned for several years and conducted in secrecy. It's unclear whether their mission was successful, though Krauser and his unit were abandoned in the jungle by the US government. The mission left Krauser as its only survivor, with the incident successfully covered up by the government. The loss of his men left Krauser with resentment towards his superiors, which imparted him with the desire to seek out and obtain unadulterated power. At some point following Operation Javier, Krauser discovered the Los Illuminados cult and became a faithful disciple under its 15th leader, Osman Sadler. He was also responsible for providing Los Illuminados with modern weaponry, such as RPGs with specialized red warheads, as well as fortifying the cult's island base, not far from the mainland. To enact the cult's plan to gain influence in the US government, Krauser conspired with his acquaintances to kidnap the president's daughter, Ashley Graham, coordinating a successful mission that disabled her protection. Krauser then had Ashley transferred to Valdelobos, where she was held and infected with a Plaga parasite. Sometime after, Krauser was stationed on Los Illuminados' island base, and was given a dominant Plaga species to enhance his own strength and agility. When researcher Luis Serra stole a sample called the Amber and fled the island, Krauser was tasked by Sadler to recover it. He was also deployed to subdue Leon and Ashley when the former arrived in Valdelobos, and proved to be a match for their forces. In the mines below Salazar's castle, Krauser managed to track down Leon and Luis, and fatally stabbed the latter from behind while he was distracted. After recovering the amber from the dying researcher, he then engaged with Leon in close quarters combat, during which he revealed his involvement in Graham's kidnapping and his reasons for his betrayal. Krauser eventually overpowered Leon, but was forced to retreat when a dying Luis fired upon him. Having achieved his objectives, Krauser left the premises to retrieve Ashley from Ramon Salazar. After the handover, he fled with Ashley to the island as Leon fought the mutated Salazar. After arriving on the island, Krauser left Ashley in Los Illuminados' research facility and handed over the amber to Sadler himself. He then began to prepare the island's ruins for a confrontation with Leon, even leaving a message saying that he intended to end the events that occurred 2 years ago. When Leon arrived, Krauser taunted him for his lack of judgment and inability to save anyone. He went on to explain his motivations were not through loyalty to the cult, but to gain power, seeing it as the most important thing. Krauser then proceeded to battle Leon as he navigated the ruins, attacking in both close quarters and ranged combat. Eventually, Krauser used his Plaga to mutate himself, enhancing his strength to superhuman levels. As Leon arrived at the final tower, Krauser caught up with him and the two engaged in a final battle to the death. Despite his abilities and strength from the parasite, he was eventually incapacitated from the inflicted injuries, leaving him unable to move. Acknowledging that his death is inevitable, Krauser implored Leon to finish him off with his own knife, which he hesitantly complied with. Before drawing his last breath, Krauser proudly told Leon that he trained him well. Krauser's body was later recovered by Albert Wesker to extract his dominant Plaga parasite as a contingency for Ada Wong's possible failure or refusal to recover the amber. Albert Wesker returns in Resident Evil 4 after he learned about the cult Los Illuminados and their usage and experimentation of the Plaga parasite. Wesker would quickly contact Ada and send her to Valdelobos to acquire a sample known as the Amber, which was a suspended state organ that contains the same organ found in the dominant Plaga species. Ada would be monitored and sent instructions from Wesker throughout the mission, but once Ada began to hallucinate and pass out in front of a group of Ganados, Wesker was forced to meet up with Ada and save her from the enemies, where he would then carry her to Chief Mendez's house and wait for her to awake. Afterwards, Ada would make her way through the rest of the village and castle, still being monitored by Wesker, until she was soon confronted by him again, where he told her about the change of plans to now activate explosives set around the island. Ada would eventually obtain the amber, but after finding out Wesker's end goal, she decided to keep it for herself. However, Wesker was unbothered by this, as him and his team managed to steal Krauser's deceased corpse after Leon defeated him, allowing Wesker to secure his own sample of the Plaga, where he would then proceed with his plans of world domination. Osman Sadler was a descendant of the Ganados that were banished from the region of Valdelobos for worshipping Las Plagas, with 7 of his ancestors being forced to live on the nearby island in the region. Sadler would then re-enter the region in the early 2000s, intent on possessing the Plaga to gain financial and military influence on the world stage. Tricking Salazar into joining Los Illuminados, he was able to infect the entire region with the Plaga parasite, ultimately creating an army of followers that would do as he said, where he then used them as both a labor force and security, ordering them to kill any trespassers, while maintaining the image that the village was operating as usual to avoid suspicion from the Spanish government. Sadler would eventually connect with Krauser and promise him power in exchange for kidnapping Ashley, which he would proceed to do so and then be granted with a dominant species Plaga. Following this, Leon would enter the region to rescue the president's daughter, which would quickly attract Sadler's attention, causing him to send Mendez after Leon. Once Mendez finally reached him, Leon was then knocked unconscious and injected with the Plaga parasite, where he would then begin to experience many hallucinations and visions of Sadler throughout his mission. Eventually, when Leon and Ashley were looking for a way off the island, they would finally come face to face with Sadler, where he then forced Ashley to fire at Leon. Ultimately failing due to running out of ammo, Sadler would then control Ashley to leave with him, leaving Leon behind. Sadler would be seen again later on when Leon was preparing to board Mike's helicopter. Just as Leon was about to climb the ladder, Sadler sent multiple Novistadors to chip away at the helicopter and cause it to crash, walking away showing no remorse. Following this, Leon would confront Sadler again while he was performing a ritual on Ashley. Just as Sadler began to take control of Leon, Ada then arrived and fired at the enemy, giving Leon a chance to escape with Ashley and cure themselves of the Plaga. Ada then entered a fierce battle with Sadler and ultimately knocked him down. Thinking he was defeated, Ada turned her back to him when he then knocked her out and used her as bait to lure out Leon. Once Leon arrived at the scene, Sadler mutated further and began an extreme battle against Leon. After enough damage was dealt, Sadler would mutate further and further, with his body placed in a cocoon-like ball while being surrounded with a mass of tentacles. After fending him off for some time, Ada threw down a rocket launcher to Leon, allowing him to fire and defeat the creature, ending the twisted tale of Osman Sadler, the man who started it all. Click this video here to find out the disturbing lore of every enemy from Resident Evil 5. Thank you for watching.